Okay, we are starting now.
Good morning, everybody, to our C-Blocks webinar on the interface between research and standardization. My name is Knut Blind. I'm a consortium partner, but more important is that we have very interesting guests which go into the details of blockchain and how the interface between research and standardization might work. We have Moritz Böhmecke, who is a former kind of PhD, now postdoc here at TU Berlin and also with Ernst & Young. We have René Lindner from DIN and the Association of the German Cities, together with Madeleine Schmut from DIN. And finally, we have also Maria from Trust IT, also representing the HSBooster, which also kind of accompanied a few projects regarding blockchain. I will be brief because I will give the other speakers more room. Therefore, I will just provide the frame, and the frame will be then kind of filled by the further contributions. The frame of this interface between research and standardization, and also then a brief slice on impacts. We might come back on them if we have a little bit time towards the end. And in general, standardization can be considered as a transfer channel, and this is a very, very new kind of conceptual approach to that. We see on the right-hand side that the practice where new problems show up, which might be then be addressed in standardization. In this context, maybe a blockchain-related stuff. On the left-hand side, also from the scientific kind of communities, there might be topics which might be then relevant for standardization. And then in standardization, we have problem definition. We produce new insights in the standardization working groups. And at the end, we might also have new standards. And most of the standards are implemented in practice, sure, but also others might be relevant for the scientific communities in the implementation. And also very important in this conceptual kind of framework is that we have also links to the regulatory framework, especially in Europe. This is very important because many European directives and regulations are specified by standards. That's the general picture. Now coming back to already 15 years old publication, but still an issue which also addresses already what we might see in further presentations of today, that we have on the left-hand side research and development, and then on the right-hand side standardization. And there are barriers on two sides. The one side, and this is probably we are going to focus mostly here, is that research and development insights might be really interesting to really develop further towards the end, even to have a standards. But there are different barriers. And the question is, how do we get these insights from the left-hand side into the right-hand side? What we might not discuss too much today is, but maybe we will see that later in the presentations. Standards also can be a kind of a supporting tool and infrastructure for research and development processes. That's the other side of the circle. To become a little bit more specific, even we borrowed a technology transfer model from Barry Boozman, where we have again on the left-hand side research, and now we'll be a little bit more specific. What's the output? Publications, patents, maybe other codified information, which is really codified knowledge. And then we transfer that into standardization. And this could be done in a specific way, that the standardization bodies screen publications and patents and bring them into the standards, or with the participation in the standardization processes. This is the other way. And we will see later some examples how this has worked in blockchain and what might be also problems the actors have faced. And finally, that's for now. As I said, we might come back later to my presentation. There are different stages in research, from the basic research to applied research, experimental development taking place in companies, and at the end, it's diffused, hopefully brought in the market. And In the times, maybe in the last century, the idea was, okay, you think about standards only when it's at the very end stage of diffusion, when you want to bring the technologies into the market, but that's not correct. And we have a very nice example that in blockchain with Moritz presentation, we already see it's already at the very beginning important to define what we are talking about. And therefore, standardization should not really start at the very end. It should even start at the very beginning of a kind of comprehensive research and innovation process. And that's my brief intro for now. And I stop now. I might come back later if we have a little bit more time, but I want to give the practitioners in blockchain the floor. Thank you. And now I hope this was a nice transition, Moritz, to your contribution.
Definitely. Just a second, let me share. Can you see the screen already? No, not yet. Now you should be able to see the screen, right? Yes. All right. Let me change to the presenter view. Okay. All right. So good morning also from my side. Thank you for the invitation, Knut and the C-Blocks team. Really happy to be here and to talk about a little bit about early standardization in the case of blockchain, and also present a little case study which kind of is based on a paper we already written 7 years ago actually. But of course, the insights still hold true, and also it's a quite, I think it's a quite nice example to illustrate the benefits of early standardization, not only terminology standards, for example, but also beyond that. And so my name is Moritz Böhmecke-Schwafert. I work as a senior researcher, postdoc at the TU Berlin. And I'm also an expert board member of the German Blockchain Association, Bundesblock. And my main occupation is being a managing consultant at Ernst & Young, where I consult the European Commission and the German ministries regarding emerging technologies with a special focus on blockchain. My research is also since 8-9 years on blockchain technology, its impact on economic development, but also the adoption of standards in this context. Yes, as we've learned from this webinar series already, of course, blockchain has an immense potential to transform industries, but its long-term success depends not only on the technical innovation and the blockchain systems and ecosystems per se, but also on key principles, shared principles and frameworks. And I will talk about one paradigm today, the so-called immutability paradigm in this context, and how early standardization around this concept could have strengthened the whole blockchain innovation ecosystem in the past. And to illustrate why early standardization is crucial, let me take you back to the year 2016 and the so-called DAO hack. DAO refers to decentralized autonomous organization. I will tell you in a second what it is, but basically it was a smart contract exploit on the Ethereum blockchain, at that time worth $50 million, so quite a lot in this time. Of course, today, unfortunately, we have almost daily these kind of exploits, which are more or less intended. But at the time there, the smart contract was not, of course, intended to be erroneous. What followed was a community divide. I will talk about this in a second. And we explore how this highlighted the need for early standardization, why defining terminologies such as the immutability paradigm could have prevented this kind of fragmentation that resulted. And also I will briefly have a small outlook on the current state of standardization in blockchain and what kind of areas I see, for example. So let's dive right into the so-called DAO hack. So I'm always referring to DAO now, which stands for Decentralized Autonomous Organization. And have a look onto the timeline, because when we talk about the DAO hack, we have to talk about the Ethereum ecosystem, because this was happening on this blockchain. So Ethereum, as probably most of you know, was founded in 2014. And it's the second major blockchain ecosystem. Its mainnet went live in 2015. In comparison to the Bitcoin blockchain, it kind of revolutionized or introduced also the concept of smart contracts and decentralized application. And one of that decentralized application was the so-called decentralized autonomous organization, the DAO, which was kind of a huge innovation. But today, for example, in many blockchain ecosystems, we have DAOs. But at the time, it was a really novel concept and introduced with Ethereum and other blockchains at the time as well. And it was a model for governing in this new decentralized structure and a new model of governing and decision making within the Ethereum network. It was launched in April 2016 in order to democratize venture capital funding. And it was a real success at the beginning. It raised 150 million in just 28 days at the time. And it was one of the most successful crowdfunding campaigns at the time. Unfortunately, being one of the first smart contracts really deployed on large scale, and also written on Solidity, which is a programming language which was quite young at the time, so many people inexperienced with that. Unfortunately, there was a vulnerability in the smart contract of the DAO, which contained a so-called recursive call vulnerability that allowed an attacker, a potential attacker, to withdraw funds repeatedly from that contract. So from this $150 million. And this flaw was actually publicly discussed weeks before the attack, but wasn't addressed because there was no standardized risk mitigation process. So also another area we might have to discuss about. And then there was an attack on this smart contract, and an attacker in June 17, 2016 drained 3.6 million Ether, which were around, as I said, 50 million more or less. Today it would be actually in the billions, given the Ethereum price. And yeah, they siphoned it out. It was not a traditional theft, but rather a manipulation of the DAO code. And of course, this then sparked debates about the legality and ethics of this, which was of course not intended. And the attacker managed to siphon away 30% of the DAO funds, and the other 70% were actually saved by a Robin Hood white hat hacker group that tried to save the other Ether for the community. And also the hacker was not able to pay out this amount of money because it was frozen for a certain amount of time, which was kind of good for the community. And then as a result, of course, this vulnerability was closed, but the community that lost that money on paper already, or not on paper, on the blockchain, that was split over the fact that they could intervene and actually try to reverse this kind of transaction, because apparently it was not intended. And a huge debate occurred because immutability is kind of the central paradigm of blockchain. And yes, and this ignited a really strong debate, which I will talk about in a second, but let me just talk about the outcome in the end. In the end, the community decided to hard fork Ethereum and reverse the transactions, but this was not done anonymously, and the whole ecosystem of Ethereum was split into two development communities: the Ethereum innovation ecosystem, and then also the Ethereum classic ecosystem, which did not want to reverse the transactions. And of course, the decentralized autonomous organization lost all its trust and closed down. But as I said, still this concept lives in most of the current blockchain projects. So, and as I said, a real intense debate ignited within the Ethereum community, and this usually at that time happened in Reddit forums, also in GitHub and other forums. So these were the people, of course, developing also on an open source level, mainly Ethereum applications, decentralized applications, and still, of course, today. And therefore, they were at the heart of the community's response. And everyone was really deeply engaged and had perspectives on this kind of crisis, and still considered one of the largest crises of the blockchain ecosystem. Of course, there's, like, for example, the FTX incident 2 years ago, but this is kind of similar from the extent. And there were basically two camps here. The code is law camp that said, well, everything on a blockchain has to be strictly immutable, nothing should be changed. Asserting that blockchains immutably should never be compromised, because otherwise it would be just a central bank. And then it was the other camp, the intervention camp, that said, well, we have to reverse that theft because it was actually not an error on the blockchain, but on a smart contract onto it. So we have to kind of mitigate that problem. And this division sparked broader philosophical debates, as you can see here in these examples, but also, of course, like 30,000 more posts. This division sparked, really debate about governance and ethics and so on. About the terminology of immutability. And immutability is, as I said already, and of course, probably all of you know, one of the central value propositions of blockchain as a technology or technological infrastructure. And blockchain achieves this immutability because of its decentralized structure, and also through the cryptographic linking blocks and the consensus mechanism, for example, proof of work, which makes it almost impossible to alter it without a majority. And of course, this brings the benefits of blockchain, that once data is recorded, or decisions, in the case of a DAO, for example, votes, they cannot be altered. This ensures integrity and trust. And also these permanent records promote transparency and verifiable audit trails, for example. But of course, immutability per se, when we think about this concept, it also raises challenges. What we've seen before, that certain activities cannot be undone if there's malicious code, for example, or activities. And this makes it also hard, this lack of irreversibility, to react to unforeseen circumstances, to certain governance changes or legal or other regulatory requirements. So the inability to modify past records created lots of challenges. And the consequence in this case was, as I said, the split up of the community. And a couple of months later, we analyzed this case in a paper, and at roughly the same time, also ISO TC 307 started the first working groups regarding standardization, and also including terminology standardization. And of course, we were a bit ahead, because writing a paper is still usually faster than standardization processes sometimes. In this case, it was. And we were proposing kind of a conceptual framework for the terminology of blockchain's immutability, or for the immutability paradigm. And you can read this here on the left-hand side. We will go from the bottom to the top here. Bottom being layers that are rather mutable, going to layers that should be immutable. So this is our concept, and this also was fed into the standardization process. And at the bottom, you can see the execution layer, which represents the local software execution on users' hardware. So this is rather a part that could be immutable. There should be no concern for blockchain immutability. These are changes, for example, on performance, stability, and security without any significant changes, like changing the consensus mechanisms and so on. And this is also usually well documented in GitHub, etc., and also blog posts. Then we have the function layer, which is rather less mutable, but still kind of mutable. It relates to functions enabling data usage. Of course, any changes must be verified for system impact, and usually minor updates are treated as code changes. And then we come rather to the system layer, and this concerns critical properties of a blockchain, meaning consensus mechanisms, incentives related to that, encryption and permission properties, and so on. And this always needs to, requires peer network agreement in order to avoid this kind of loss or split, what we have seen, for example, in the Ethereum ecosystem. And system properties should be conditionally immutable, was our thesis there. So actually, this would have justified kind of the DAO incident, because, it is debatable at least. And lastly, we have the data layer, and this is the actual core of the blockchain, which concerns stored data. And data should only be added to a blockchain, so historical records should never be immutable. Historical records should be immutable and should never be altered. Yeah, data may be temporarily uncertain until the network reaches consensus. So this is the actual core, yeah, this was our suggestion for this. And as I said, the ISO TC also picked it up and worked on terminology standards. There's been also publication. I don't know. I think it was in 2021. I'm not sure anymore, but quite late. If we consider that we already had the need for a definition of the terminology in 2015-16, and also our paper was too late actually. Yeah, but still, this shows a little bit that early standardization can build trust and accelerate the diffusion of evolving technologies and also avoid fragmentation of innovation communities. And yeah, as we know, blockchain is still in kind of in its infancy, although already, yeah, when we count from Nakamoto's paper, 16 years old. There are different areas where still standards are needed. For example, as I said, we have terminology standards. It would be standards to define key concepts like immutability or smart contracts, for example. These usually avoid misunderstandings, foster shared understanding of system properties. Then, of course, there might be governance standards which specify conditions for change and system rules. They might be also helpful to establish procedures and reducing disputes that might not be done only decentralized on many forums and Reddit threads, for example, which is quite difficult to govern, of course. And of course, there are many new governance models and many new blockchain ecosystems that have established them that are not only happening in forums anymore. And a huge part are, of course, technical standards. Probably most of you think about this when they think about standards in this context, which define good practices, code execution, reference architectures, interoperability frameworks, etc. But also in the case of blockchain, specifically, we have to highlight documentation standards because many protocols are introduced with white papers. And here it's really useful to have some documentation standards, how to describe and disclose conditions, for example, under which systems rules may change or code may change. And this supports the trust building through transparency and accountability. And this is a general message that standardization builds trust. And when we talk about blockchain, we always talk about a technology that can bridge the so-called trust gap. So blockchain per se does not bring trust, but it can unfold its potential where there are trust gaps and try to bridge them via certain implementation. And at the same time, this does not help if the people do not trust in the mechanism. So as I said, early standardization can contribute towards that and also prevent fragmentation, which also helps in the regulatory processes. And then, through this creates a fertile ground for innovation. And beyond blockchain and other technologies is also quite important. When we think about quantum computing, for example, there are standards needed for cryptographic protocols for large-scale adoption. When we think about AI development or responsible AI development, there's also still a need for agreements on fairness and accountability metrics, for example, to build trustworthy AI systems. So this is not only a blockchain thing, of course, but this is just to illustrate that. And when we have this outlook and look at the concrete needs for standardization, there are still many needs. So if you engage in standardization blockchain or want to engage, there are many open topics. This is, of course, only a selection for potentials. And as I said, ISO/TC has already published 12 standards, and I think 10 more are in development, which address, and those that are already published address key areas, such as terminology. There's one standard on reference architecture or security protocols. But what's still needed are standards in interoperability, data documentation standards, and security in other frameworks, just as a selection. For example, in interoperability, there's still a need for cross-chain communication protocols. Of course, there are blockchain ecosystems that are kind of specialized in bridging chains, but yeah, there's no fixed standard for that. Also, when we think about blockchain applications and trade, for example, there are no unified APIs or common frameworks for seamless data exchange. And if we talk about data exchange with so-called oracles, so the physical points where data comes from, like from the physical world into the blockchain, we don't have any uniform approach for data transmission or data recording in this context. Also, other potentials would be consistent metadata structures for blockchain transactions, or with respect to security in other frameworks, universal digital identifier frameworks. So many areas for and potential for standardization, and so a lot of things to do. All right.
Thank you, Moritz.
Thank you.
I think it really reflects nicely how kind of this general framework on the different types of standards along the research and innovation process has been now implemented and realized in the context of blockchain. And by the way, the paper you mentioned with our colleague Hoffman and others is also a very highly cited piece of work, and that's shows also that it's maybe also at the end good for researchers to bring their papers into standardization early. But the time is running, and therefore I give René, I don't know, is Madeleine, you are here. Hello.
Hi.
The link here is just as a brief background. We have been together in another Horizon project, Impulse or Impulsi, where kind of digital identity technologies also based on blockchain have been developed and implemented in practice, and René and Madeleine represented DIN, that means the standardization body, being responsible for bringing maybe some of the research results to standardization. Therefore, the floor is yours. Thank you.
Great. Thanks a lot. I will going to share the slides. 1 second. So. Okay, now you should see the slides. I will make them big again. As said by Knut, I'm here with my former colleague Madeleine. We have together supported the Impulse project on identity management and public services. And my career way brought me now the last 2 months to the Association of German Cities. So I will bring some insights from the Impulse project together with Madeleine, and afterwards, in the end, I will focus a bit more on the transfer aspects of the results of the project. Our presentation is a bit divided into 4 different parts. I will start with a general introduction on standardization I projects, because myself, I have finalized in the summer my PhD directly on this topic. And then Madeleine will focus on section 2 and 3, dedicated directly to the standardization approach in the Impulse project, and also the liaison activities with standardization committees. And last but not least, I will then say some thoughts on how to support the transfer of the results of the project for the end users, the cities themselves. For standardization I projects, there is like 5 different items which need to be considered here. The first one is that you should analyze existing standards and ongoing standardization activities in a research project in order to identify, for example, the project terminology, but also like to have the information on the development of tools. So kind of tools need the state of the art, and standards as part of the state of the art. Then the second part is the identification of standardization potentials. So out of the results of the project, the potential results of the project, the end user needs, and also the agglomeration of both standardization potentials can be identified, and these usually are a set of 4 to 8 possible results of a project. And of course, you cannot do everything at the same moment, so you have to define a strategy, a standardization strategy, where you have to decide the specific standardization path. If it's, for example, a send workshop agreement, if it's an input to a full consensus standards, or is it maybe like a liaison, like a partnership with the standardization committee in order to exchange the information from the project directly to the standardization committee. The conduction of standardization activities is a fourth step, where you directly transfer the project results into standardization, and the involvement of project external partners is the most crucial part here. Last but not least, on this mission exploitation of standardization activities, so not only conducting the activities, also promoting these to the end users, and also potentially uplift standards like, for example, standard work agreement to a European standard or ISO standard, which takes more than a research project has as a lifetime, so more than 3 years. Usually, that's the reason why it's difficult to develop an EN or ISO standard directly in a research project. Here, like a small differentiation between the different kind of standards. The full consensus standards are on the top on the right there, with on national levels, for example, the DIN standard. On European level is the EN standard. On international level, for example, is an ISO standard. There's like a bit less consensus and less mature documents, which are called specifications, which are then, for example, technical specification, technical reports on European level, which are developed in technical committees. And there are also like the sandbox agreements, which are developed in a consortium of a research project, for example, similar to a DIN specification. And in comparison, consortia standards are a closed body of experts in comparison to the ones from the standardization system, which is an open body of experts. Just like before I hand over to my colleague Madeleine, we have promoted our activity standards plus innovation, where you can find more information on how the link between standards and innovation and research are happening, and also some success stories how it can be best integrated. So now we hand over directly to my colleague Madeleine. Please.
Thanks, Ronnie. So yeah, let me give you an overview of what we have done with regard to standardization within the imports project. Imports project was about identity management and public services, and by using blockchain and AI, electronic identifications were improved, especially with regard for the use for public services. And this project had the duration of 3 years, and it actually ended at the end of January this year. And as Dean, we were active as a project partner within this Impulse project to support the project with regard to standardization. And as René has shown at the beginning, there are those 5 steps we always try to follow within research projects. And the first step is always to raise awareness within the research consortium for relevant standards and also standards under development. And this is why also for the Impulse project, we developed a standardization landscape so that everyone knows, okay, there are already a lot of standards which tackle our topic where we are doing our research within this project, and we could take those standards already into account when developing our solutions. And since it is not always clear for everyone on how such a standards research can actually be done, because therefore you won't necessarily need a standardization body like Dean, we wrote a paper which we published in the Journal of ICT Standardization, which is called Analyzing the Standardization Landscape for Identity Management and Public Services, a standards review for the Impulse project. And when you are scanning this QR code, then you will go directly to this paper. So if you are interested in this, then just click on it. Yeah. And yeah, after those standards research, we also had a closer look on the impulse results to identify standardization potentials. This was something which we have done with all the project partners within the workshop. We also found some standardization potentials, and based on that and on following discussions, we decided for a standardization strategy, which actually only included the contribution to ongoing standards development. And we decided against the initiation of an own standardization document based on our results, because there were so many standards currently under development within the related technical committees that it doesn't make sense from our point of view to develop a further standard. So we try to give input to those current standards under development. And this is something which you can only do via liaison with the standardization committee if you want to get involved really at an early stage. And next slide, please. Therefore, those liaisons can be established on European, but also on international level. On European level, you have the Senelec Guide 25, where you find a quite extensive description on what you have to take care of if you want to liaise with a technical committee. But what are actually the benefits of such a thing? So when you have established a liaison between a research project and a technical committee you are interested in, you get access to its working documents. So you always know what they are working on. You can participate in the meetings of those standardization committees and of their working groups. So you can also exchange with those experts. You get to know what they are discussing, what will come within the next years with regard to standardization. And one really great advantage is for a research project that you can really implement your knowledge, your results, via commenting on the draft standards within those technical committees and working groups. Yeah, next slide, please. And yeah, for the impulse project, there were, of course, a lot of technical committees interesting for us, especially on international level, the ISO TC 307. But actually, when you are going for a liaison between a research project and technical committee, it's always important which documents do they currently have in the drafting stage, because to those documents you can really contribute to with your expertise. And there was one TC on European level, which was really quite interesting for us. This was CEN TC 224, where we established a liaison with the biometrics working group and the European Digital Identity Wallets working group, because they had a lot of standards in the drafting stage, which were quite interesting for us as an impulse project, and where we also thought where we can contribute really too. And on national level, there was a Spanish standardization committee, which during that time developed a standard on blockchain and distributed ledger technologies. And one of our project partners also participated in this national standardization committee and also followed the the development process of the standard, which is currently now established at European level, or it will be uplifted to that level. So yeah, and this is what our project partner who was involved in the Spanish standardization committee said about the liaison. So for him, it was very interesting to follow the development process and also to participate in the development process of such a standard. Yeah, and with that, I will hand over back to you, René.
Thanks a lot, Madeleine. I will now give a final insight on the transfer of the project results. Just like to summarize a bit, because you will find a lot of information on the project inside on the website impulse-2020.eu. But in principle, there have been 6 different case studies related mainly to some different items of a city, of a region. And I would just not go into detail to this, but all of this have been supported by the blockchain technology and have been supported to be implemented also beyond these cases. So then the question in regard to transferring them, it's really important to actually check the requirements for future implementation of these results. So one of these, of course, is like bring them a bit like more open access or bring them away with these results, no? And this is quite important, a way which can be conducted via, for example, standards, because standards are uptaking the results or the general requirements of these results, of these case study results, and putting them into requirements and recommendation sections, which then can be easily adapted by other regions or other cities. What is also important is that for future implementation is always the integration of further end users from different countries. In this case, in Germany, was a difficulty, for example, that a lot of German research was done, but the case studies have been conducted and not in Germany, in different levels. No, so now it's really important also to verify the application possibility or the scalability also to the countries where you would like to implement these as well. So that's the reason why it's also important now to scale them up to other countries. And also, it's important when talking about blockchain. Blockchain has been a subject a couple of years ago, which was quite highly like in the view of different the entities. Nowadays, it's still there, but when we think about big data and other topics, it should be also considered actually, and also the discourse of other thematic areas, because then you see the whole potential of it. Then try to summarize it a bit, like you have like the blockchain for electronic identity public services. You have the different cases. You have the different related thematic areas that in one point where I'm working now is the smart city and digitalization of cities section, which is a really good field of play for this blockchain methodology. But in principle, as there are so many different fundings for so many different items over there, we always have to see the whole picture. And that's the reason why the relation to other topics is quite interesting here. At the same time, also what is important is to check about the supportive regulations you have with all the topic of blockchain and similar to electronic identity. There's, for example, the European Digital Identity Framework, which is from the European Commission put there, which is also supporting actually the implementation or the future implementation of such technologies which have been developed, for example, in this Impulse project. And all of these items are important actually to support the rollout of these use cases to different countries, no, and not to keep them as a success story by themselves, which have been a good success story. I know that, for example, this citizen card from the city of Gijon in the north of Spain have been quite successful because it really summarize all the different services a city can provide, or also like private providers can provide to the cities in one card, in one service, and you don't have to share your electronic identity or identity with all these service providers, because everything is managed via these via the citizen card, I would say, like this, no? And to really exploit these kind of tools, it's really important to have this rollout and to have this thought at the same time with this thematic areas and the supportive regulation. That's everything from our side for the Impulse project. I hope you have good view on the inside of the project. If you have any questions, Madeleine is still working for Dean, but I'm working for the Germanization of Cities, Städtetag, but we are more than happy to answer your questions. Thanks a lot.
Thank you, Madeleine. Thank you, René, for giving us now a very specific insights how the transfer could work within a kind of concrete horizon project, also with concrete outputs like sand workshop agreements or even national standards. And this brings me directly to Maria, which who is kind of involved in HSBooster, a project which systematically supports kind of horizon projects regarding standardization, and she gives us a brief insight how the blockchain success stories look like in the context of Booster. Maria.
Thank you very much, Knut. Good morning, everyone. Have the pleasure here to summarize in this last, let's say, 10 minutes of the webinar what we have achieved with the HSBooster project. HSBooster is a pilot project. It's a CSA that started in April 2022. And he has worked in the past almost 3 years to put together a set of services that can support European projects, funded projects to valorize their results via contributing to standardization in general. So we've spent mostly the initial part of the project in designing what could be the most successful type of support services. And we've done this with, let's say, a try and error approach. So we started initially with an idea in our grant agreement, and then thanks to the services that we delivered in the initial phase and the feedback of the experts, we refined the model, and it became kind of different than what we had imagined before. But that's good because it means we developed something that was based on practice and that could be then maybe scaled in the future. So here in this slide you find the partners of the consortium. The project is coordinated by Trust IT and Compla that I'm representing today. Then we have Dansk Standard, Dublin City University, University of Belgrade, and SGS in the consortium. And we are offering to the projects 5 types of services. The first service is awareness. So via events, workshops, webinars, the help desk, we generate and we create awareness about standardization in general and how it can be used in project results. Then we have the orientation service. We have developed some resources, and I will show quickly one in a minute, to help projects develop their standardization strategy and the initial steps that they have to take in order to onboard the standardization elements into their work plan. Then the core of the project was this mentoring activity where we had almost 300 projects apply, supported via sort of premium type of consultancy where they would be matched with experts, and the experts would consult them over a month of 3-4 months, over a period of 3-4 months to guide how they could bring standardization forward. We also had some funding possibility for projects that wanted to implement a SAN workshop agreement, like in the case of the presenters before me, Madeleine and René highlighted for Dean and for the Impulse project. And then we've developed a training academy with modules around how to valorize research results via standardization. So one of the tools that we had is called the standardization orientation tool, and here I have to acknowledge the great support that René made to this tool because he was also one of the experts in our pool. So this is a very quick and easy to fill in online resource that you can enter, and if you are representing a project, you just give general information about the project, about the technology readiness level of the project, and how knowledgeable you are already about standardization. And based on these initial elements, the tool gives back a set of guidelines and advice on how you can move your first steps and where are other useful links and resources that you can take advantage of to start the standardization process. Regarding the premium service, as I was saying, this was a one-to-one type of consultancy that we delivered to applicant projects for free. So anyone could apply, and based on what they needed in their application, we matched them with an expert in the same field. We had 5 main application topics that you find in the right side of the slide. So sustainable digitalization, green transition, health resilience, smart cities, and circular economy in buildings, which were decided in the beginning of the project based on standardization priorities. And the consultancy would go on with very satisfied projects, as it's shown in the survey results, and with a lot of participation, especially from SME that are partners of projects. So the overall aim, as you can see, is very in line with what Knut was saying in the beginning. So trying to link research and standardization, trying to lower the barriers that can be in place, barriers in terms of resources that are not there, in terms of knowledge that is not there, or skills that maybe smaller players in the consortium may lack. So let me just give you a final overview of some projects that we've helped with our consultancy. So we have, for instance, the glass project on the left side. This project was involved in e-government and digital identity and wallet technologies, and in their application they clarified they wanted to be put in touch with specific SDOs and with specific blockchain initiatives such as the European Blockchain Service Infrastructure. And with the help of the assigned expert, they were actually put in touch, and the class project coordinator joined the national body to engage with SDOs such as Sensenalec and ISO to present the project and to try and include their results and their insights into the work of the TC. On the other side, Dedicat 6G was a project mainly on 6G, as the name suggests, but they were interested also, among other things, in understanding better how to innovate in blockchain-related area, focusing especially on energy efficiency and edge deployments. So they had in mind already some standards committee of interest in ETSI, 3GPP, ISO, more specifically, and the service in this case helped them understand how to tackle all these different areas, guiding on what the role of each partner in the consortium that was involved in the standardization task could be. So formalization and guidance in this type of strategy was given by HSBooster. Then we have the low card case, which I put together with Glass again, because they requested a similar service that was in terms of engaging with a TC in a different area. So they were in the law enforcement agencies domain with the focus on using blockchain for transparency and for privacy. And they were interested specifically in the ISO JTC1 SC27 working group 4 on security topics, and they were able, thanks to HSBooster experts, to establish a liaison, as Madeline was explaining before, with this committee, and it was very helpful for their objective to be involved in the activities of this TC, receive the documentation, and contribute to the work. While PESNU, very similarly to DEDICAT 6G, needed some guideline strategy and prioritization. This was a project in agriculture, and they were interested in, also using blockchain and data integrity models to reduce the use of pesticide in their work. And in this case, again, the recommendations were how the partners could contribute with their specific activities to the standardization activities of the project. And last but not least, we have a final case of Infinitec and FAME, which we selected to, highlight as a success story for HSBooster, because in this case we had a follow-up, successful follow-up. So Infinitec applied. It was a project in the fintech domain, and they were at the end of their lifetime, and so they started the service, but then it was continued by the follow-up, which likely had some partners in common with this other, project name, and they were mostly focused on the use of blockchain in this fintech domain. They contributed many outputs in terms of de facto standards, in terms of, outputs of ISO, IC bodies, and also they contributed to a SEN workshop agreement on trusted data transactions. And they engaged a lot with many, not only SDOs, but also, industrial partnerships and industrial standards representatives. We have more success stories like Infinitec and FAME in our website, hsbooster.eu/success stories. And if you visit the website, you will also find all the other resources that I didn't have the time to explain in detail, such as the training academy. As well as our recommendations report that combines all the learnings that we developed throughout our journey. So I think my time is up. So I'll stop sharing, and thank you very much for your attention. If you have any questions, I'm available.
Yeah, thank you, Maria, for completing the picture that you kind of presented with the examples on the blockchain related project you could support during HSBooster. And we have a few minutes left for questions if they are also among the panelists, because among the participants I don't see raised hands. You know that the schedules are quite tight before Christmas, therefore we didn't have so many participants, but I think we got a nice overview on how research and standardization really fit together in blockchain, starting from the very beginning, more or less 10 years ago, to current activities also under European Horizon Europe projects and programs. I think it means it will go on, and probably also in the next work program and FP10 the topic will be there. Maria shared some links here. Another information in April 10th next year, we will have also the final event of C-Blocks, which will be then also promoted among the participants of today. Otherwise, since and there are also applications possible still to get some support from Booster. Also regarding C-Blocks, we are looking for best practice cases. If there are examples on standardization in the area of blockchain, please let us know. I think otherwise I will conclude this last webinar of C-Blocks. There will be another one also on education, where we might probably address a little bit more also the ethical and European value dimensions, and a new dimension getting interesting. It's beyond the technical and economic one, to discuss that also with interested people. Okay, let's see, anything left? then also some promotion. Impulse is also over, but if you are interested, there's still this website running on the it was an H 2020 project. Yeah, then thanks, Madeleine, thanks, Maria, René, and Moritz for your contributions. Maria, maybe you can share your slides with me. I got the other slides now. Thanks a lot, and maybe see you soon in other contexts in Berlin, Brussels, or elsewhere. I wish you relaxing kind of seasonal breaks and a good start into hopefully better 2025. Thank you.
Thanks a lot. Bye bye.
Thank you.
Thank
Bye.
you. Bye.
Gabriela for your supporting role. Thank you.